Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Build Your Digital Community. I'm your host, I'm Christina Bartold, and I'm so excited to be here today chatting here with Deanna Wheeler. And why I'm so excited about this topic is because lately a lot of the conversations I've been having with both my business partner and a lot of my entrepreneurial friends is really focused around mindfulness, mental health, how busy our lives can feel, and how important it is for us to be taking some of that time and space for ourselves. And so, that being said, I'm so excited to have Deanna here, who is a certified meditation teacher and mindfulness coach. And Deanna, I would love it for you to tell everybody a little bit about you and kind of how you got into this work.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I always appreciate this conversation because I think there's so much behind it and it's so powerful in so many areas of our lives to have this sense of intention and purpose that comes with mindfulness. So I started meditation probably like most of you. Like, well, I heard about it, thought it might be a good thing to try. I was told it's like pretty awesome, but it felt awkward and weird. And so, kind of this on and off cycle until it became more consistent practice and I noticed the benefits. And I was at a point in my life that I was really looking for some answers to dealing with things. Like we all have a point, a pivotal moment in our life where things just feel really
Yeah.
hard. And I was at that point looking for help, looking for something that would help me work through these situations and challenges that I was facing. And so that experience of going through meditation and learning how to do it, and like I mentioned, feeling the benefits, because that's where the magic happens. When you really start to feel how it impacts you, that was kind of the moment I knew I needed to bring this farther and help other people with it. So I got my certification. It has been 5 years. So I've been teaching for a little over 4 years in various capacities. And through that time, just developed kind of my own teaching methods and ways to help, overwhelmed, stressed out people and help them be part of their lives and live with this joy and happiness that we all deserve.
I love that. And I'm curious why entrepreneurs are kind of, I know you have a bit of a focus. Like, I'm curious why you think entrepreneurs benefit so much from mindfulness practices.
I think when you're an entrepreneur, when you're in charge of all the pieces and parts, right? Like that's a lot to manage and navigate. And then put that on top of potentially having a family or a partner or spouse, other people in your direct household that you're like navigating household tasks and family obligations and trying to find time for like leisure and hobby. Like
Yeah.
what? That's usually like the last thing on the list. And for most entrepreneurs, it's creating that. And I don't really like the term balance because I feel like it isn't there. Like that's just not even really possible. But finding this like harmony between your life, your personal goals and aspirations, and building a business and being that CEO, that person in charge who's navigating all the parts. And it can get really muddy and murky, right? Because most of us work at home, a lot of us work at home. So these boundaries between that family time and that business time, and that's where being mindful and being intentional with the tasks you need to do for your business and the tasks and the things you want to be doing with your family or in your personal life, that's creating kind of that balance, like I said, that harmony. A lot of us as entrepreneurs really love what we do. And so we could be doing it all day long, but then we're sacrificing other things along the way. And so creating this space where you can grow as a person in your dreams and goals with your family and life, but then also building this business to grow and thrive as well, because most of us are doing amazing things, serving other people and creating these communities of support and encouragement, which are so important, but we miss that support and encouragement for ourselves then along the way.
That's powerful. I think that that's so important because I do see this where, we're supporting so many people, supporting our clients, and we're the first people to, be hyping up other people, but never hyping up really ourselves or the work that we're doing. And this is a conversation that I've had a few times on this podcast with a few friends, Steve and Jeanette, who are also kind of agency owners and have been on a wellness journey. But it's hard when you feel like you have so many competing priorities that taking that 15 minutes to meditate or 10 minutes to go for a walk or get some direct sunlight, like that stuff feels so secondary when actually it's so primary. Like it needs to be the first thing we're doing because then we get the opportunity to do other things better.
Yeah, the idea of like filling your cup, that's something we all hear and we've heard for, decades. It's been a thing. As a mom, fill your cup first. Don't put yourself last. As a wife, as a partner, like, you have to take care of yourself. And it's something we hear, but it's something that's so hard to implement. And when we can look at it from that perspective of, if I do this for me, I can show up for others even better. Like that, if I feel good, I can help others feel good. If I am taking care of myself, like I can model that for my clients, for my customers, let them see the importance of taking care of themselves, like making that correlation of we feel like there's this idea that this time for yourself is selfish,
Yeah.
or like, how can you put yourself first when there's all these other things to do? Well, in reality, we can do more and be better when we have put ourselves first.
And I actually think about this often about clients too, where it's like I actually only want to work with clients who want me to prioritize myself. Because I originally, when we were originally getting started, and I've talked about this before, a lot of our clients in the initial round, and we have some clients we've had since the beginning and don't apply to this, but were folks that truthfully like loved the people pleaser nature of us. Like they loved that we responded to emails. They would message us all the time. Like they didn't have boundaries. And we would reinforce that because we would constantly be responding to them or constantly be engaging. And, if something happened, we would respond so fast. So that's typical, like that was typical, like our people pleasing behaviors. And we got clients that fed off of that. And now I have clients where even I had a client message me yesterday. She had my phone number and she voice noted me on Sunday. And I didn't respond. I listened to it and didn't say anything. And this was her asking to increase her package, right? So normally that would be like, I'd be like, oh, like I need to respond right away because, this is money on the table, like whatever. And I was like, this money will be there tomorrow if it's meant to be there tomorrow. And it actually ended up becoming a really fruitful conversation that actually turned into her increasing her package more than yesterday had expected, because I took a breath and was like, hey, I've been thinking about this for the last 12 hours and here's some of the things that I think you need, but also like, let's connect on these things. Right. And so I think when we're actually honest with ourselves about like what our boundaries are and actually taking some of that space away from our business, we get better results long term because we're actually more connected to ourselves and we're feeling a little bit better. And I think we can pour back better into our clients.
It's, we have this, meditation is like the opposite of where most of the world is, in this instant gratification and like wanting results and answers. And I think about this, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, even before my lifetime, like if you wanted to talk to someone or you had a question for somebody or you were like researching something, it took time. It didn't happen. You couldn't even leave people a voicemail, or answering machines didn't exist. Like you actually had to keep calling that person until somebody answered the phone. Like it's and now that we have this instant connection, which is amazing, like the fact that we can be here together is so awesome, but it has those, I don't want to say disadvantages, but there are some negative things that come along with that, in that expectation, that kind of microwave mentality that it's got to happen right now. And what you just said about taking that time and evaluating it and thinking about it, like that story is mindfulness 1000%, because you could have responded and not thought about it, not given it your attention, and had the original package that she was thinking. But instead of taking that evaluation, and I like to call it the pause, taking that break to think, what does this person actually need? Where are they actually going, and how can I really fill a space for them between A and B? And then you presented something even better, right? And just think about if you had responded yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't have had that time to say, I think this is the better way, and this will serve you and your business in a better capacity. And we just get so like, gotta go right
Yeah.
now. So pausing really can be so beneficial for a million different reasons, but that example is a perfect one.
And that's funny because I wouldn't have thought of that as mindfulness, you know? And I actually talk about this with my friend Stacey Millard all the time because she owns an affirmation deck company called Love Powered Co. And it's like whenever we think of things like affirmations, mindfulness, meditation, like we imagine like a yoga mat and like a candle and like an essential oil, right? Like it's like we can only be mindful when we're like, you know, in that Zen space. But she's taught me a lot through a lot of her work that like, you know, mindfulness can happen like while you're eating. Like, and it's like, you know, just taking that breath or like recognizing the things that you're eating or asking yourself what you're tasting and like taking those moments to like slow your brain down because I'm the first to admit that, like, you know, today I even ate lunch here while I was watching a webinar and then, like, I'm running around and I just made a coffee and, like, you know, I haven't had a moment to breathe. And so I think that that's, like, really, really interesting. It's, like, it's not just mindfulness, isn't just, like, the yoga mat. And curious if you could talk a bit more about that.
So if you have the capacity and the space to do that in your life, amazing. Because, I mean, who doesn't want to lay on a yoga mat and have some essential oils going and some calming music, right? Like, that is what we picture. And it seems like this sort of far-fetched idea in our lives. Like, I don't have time for that. And so if you do, great. And keep that practice and take that space. But most people, especially just starting with mindfulness and meditation, we have this resistance. And so knowing that you can incorporate it into literally anything in your life and you don't have to sit on that yoga mat is where I kind of like to say the magic happens. You can be standing in line at the grocery store, and a lot of us are like, okay, I got the next thing to go do here, so if we could like speed this up, you know, that's what we're thinking in our minds. And like you said, eating dinner, it's like, okay, well, we got to clean all this up and get all this put away so that we can move on to the next thing. And our minds are always like, what's coming? And so to make that space while you're eating dinner, like appreciate, just take a few deep breaths and like appreciate what's on your plate. Who are you having dinner with? When you're standing in line at the grocery store, appreciate that that's maybe the first time you've stopped moving all day. Like, you know, like we can build that into anything. Sitting in the car waiting for picking up kids at school, like take that space to use it and take a few deep breaths. Maybe have some words of affirmation or some gratitude for what is maybe happening in your life at that time, and really just reconnect. I think we have this go, 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 as I mentioned, like we're just one thing to the next all the time. What's next? What's on my list? Where am I going from here, right? And just that pause, which I mentioned before, that pause is so powerful because it gives us a second to reset, and it gives us a few moments to think about where we're going, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And I always say when I work with my clients, the three things that I like to ask is, first, what are you doing? We have to build that awareness. Why are you doing it? Does it actually serve a purpose, or is it because it's something that everyone has told you to do? And then lastly, how do you feel? Like we do things, but we don't really try to connect that to how we feel at the end of the day. And so those three pieces to me are kind of what building this mindfulness practice in your life can be about. So you could stand in line at the grocery store and say, what am I doing? Okay, well, I'm shopping for groceries. Why am I doing it? Well, because we're out of food. How do I feel? Well, I kind of feel stressed out right now and anxious. Okay, what can I do about that? Or how do I feel? You know, I feel pretty good today. I'm pretty happy. This is feeling good. Like creating that space, and then we know what we can do next. We know how we can take action to change where we're maybe not feeling the best, or what we can continue doing in the areas where we are feeling our best.
I love that. Well, I'm curious to know what you would say. So, if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, yeah, yeah, I hear you. Mindfulness. Like, I'm, and I actually see it like more and more with entrepreneurs that I really respect, like more high level entrepreneurs. It's like, this is just like a part of their lives. Like, and I think there's also a glamorizing of it on Instagram, and like people are really like, all these cold plunges, but like, these things are really important, being able to take that time for ourselves. And so I'm curious, like, if someone was looking to get into being mindful, like taking that first step, what would you encourage them to do?
My very first thing always is to find space in your day for 5 minutes. It does not have to be big. We have this kind of like go big or go home. If I can't sit and meditate for 30 minutes, what's it going to do for me? And it's really quite the opposite. A little bit consistently is where you start to feel those benefits, where you start to see the changes in connecting with yourself. So start small. We can all find 5 minutes. I know like most days feel like all over the place, but you can find 5 minutes and just take some time to just breathe and pause all the things, phone on do not disturb, ask the family to just like, I'm doing this thing for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
emails and everything off, and just like close your eyes and feel like what that feels like to just stop. And a lot of times what people say to me when they do this very small, easy thing is, I didn't realize I wasn't actually breathing. Like, we get going so much, and like, if you notice when you're working on things, like you hold your breath, or you're like clenching, like just you're so in it. And the idea that we aren't actually breathing how we're supposed to be breathing and getting the oxygen into our bodies how we're supposed to be is mind-blowing. And it's so simple, but something that no one pays attention to. So just that can like change your energy and how you feel. If you notice when you're slumped forward at your desk, like it's harder to breathe. If you sit and you pull your body back and you open up your chest and you take a deep breath, it feels completely different. And just connecting to that and knowing that that's the place to just start and then grow from there. That it doesn't have to be as hard as our brain wants to make it.
Yeah, and I hear you on this go big or go home thing, because I think especially like where wellness is so glamorized now, and in a way I think it hasn't been, which is great because I actually think it encourages us, right? When we see people who are really like successful, or that we look up to, and they're not hustling, but they're doing their thing, right? Like they're making it happen. Like that is powerful. And so what I'm curious about as well is like, so say someone is, starting to make the commitment towards meditation or mindfulness, or whatever that looks like, and they're starting with those few minutes. Do you have any encouragement on like what they could start doing? Like, is it, just breathing at your desk? Is it just taking a quick walk? Is it noticing things in a room? Like, what is something that someone could start doing today?
Any of those, actually. I mean, those are all great options to slow down and be mindful. I always, I like to say that, like, the hustle mentality is, we view it as like that go big or go home, go all in, never give up, don't quit, which is good, but not to the point of burning ourselves out. And so what we actually can do is by slowing down, we can speed up. We can be more productive. We can be more present and aware and get more things done, being less distracted and kind of, I guess, wasting time, so to speak, because we're intentional. Like we are paying attention to what we're doing and why we're doing it and the purpose it has. And so that's that momentum where slowing down actually can propel us forward. And so taking 5 minutes away from your desk, I like to use timers and apps where it's like, move away. I wish it would actually just like lock my computer so I had to walk away for 5 minutes, because there's always like, oh, I'll just work a couple more minutes and then half an hour goes by. But I'm a big fan of timers to just move away from the desk. Go refill your water. Like most of us will sit here and all day and realize like, oh, I haven't had anything to drink. Those little things, moving your body creates a different energy that gives you more space to be creative and get out of that kind of stuck, stagnant feeling that often happens. Getting fresh air changes your energy. Taking that time to breathe. Taking a piece of paper out and just writing down all the thoughts in your head. Doing the classic brain dump, because you're sitting there and you're getting ideas and you're trying to stay focused on your work or whatever's in front of you. And so emptying that stuff out and coming back to sort of prioritize and reorganize it later on. Any of those things are very practical and very effective, and all ways to be mindful. I think, like you said, people kind of expect mindfulness to be this like magical little experience, and it's really something we can build into all the little pockets of our day. Everything we're doing, we can be more mindful in.
And something you said earlier too is resonating as well. It's like asking people in your life to create that space for you too, right? Like, so if I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast are moms and they have a partner, or maybe they don't, but like asking somebody to watch your kids for 10 minutes so you can do something, or not feeling guilty about giving them an iPad for a bit so that you can have a moment. Like, I think that makes you better in so many areas of your life. And I've been amazed too, like when I've asked for what I've needed when it comes to wellness, people have like met me at my expectations, right? Like where, there's very rarely a time where I've ever spoken to somebody and they've been like, oh, I'm burnt out. And I'm like, that sucks. Like, keep working, right? It's like, okay, like how can we accommodate that? Like, let's figure out a better way to work together. Like, we're always trying to be, I think like if you surround yourself around the right people, there's a lot of empathy there and like a lot of opportunity for that.
It is, and it's historically, I guess, society, but women in more particular, we don't like to ask for help. We don't like to admit we need somebody else to give us a little assistance here and there, right? And so it's actually pretty powerful when you get to a place where you can be like, I need to do this so that I don't lose my mind. Can you help me? Like, I just need 5 minutes to go outside. Could you like watch the children? Or in your business, building in those little 5-minute, 10-minute breaks between clients or between trainings and webinars, and, like giving that space to yourself, setting the boundary outwardly, but also inwardly that I need this and it's going to benefit me and everyone else. The cool thing, kind of about what you were just saying in both business and family life is if we model that, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but if we model that and other people see us doing that for ourselves, they're going to be more inclined to do that for themselves as well. And so, our children growing up in a much different world than I grew up with, technology and, all of this stuff and just all the things coming at them all day long. And in our businesses, our clients, they start to see the need to take care of themselves. And if they're building, if you're serving entrepreneurs, in the case like I am, the way they're building their businesses, it's going to impact their clients. Like it's this ripple effect where we can change, like we can change the world is what I like to say. But if the whole world could collectively take a deep breath, like the chaos we feel, the frustration we feel, the constant technology, like everything coming at us, this feed of information all the time, like it's pretty stressful. And I think that takes its toll long term. And so if we can just slow that down and take that deep breath every so often as possible, I'd like to say. But it's really a game changer, and it can spiral out into all of the people around us.
I love that. And I totally agree. I think it's on us to change the culture of the future, and especially of like the working future. Like I notice this a lot with a lot of the young folks I work with, but like some of the things that they say is like, oh, I don't have capacity for that. And that used to bother me because I'd be like, "Ugh, what do you mean you don't have capacity for that? Like, I don't have capacity for this. Like, but like, here I am hustling. But people are so much more mindful of their boundaries, or even like some of the people we've interviewed for jobs, they're like, I want to leave work at 5. That's important to me. And actually looking at that as like a sense of like a positive thing, right? Like I want to look at that as like, okay, you have good boundaries, and if you're gonna work hard in the 9 to 5, like that's awesome. And from there, it's like it's gravy. Like I don't need you to work 5 till 10. In fact, like I don't want that from you. And we all do our piece when we need to, but at the same time, it's like I don't want that to be the culture of our business. And so I think it's on us who like know better to do better as like employees, as employers, as like, business owners with clients, like to model some of this so that this way, like people aren't expecting instant responses for everything. Because not everything's a fire. And I think that that's stuff that takes time for people to learn. But I do think the more that we as leaders get to practice some of these things, the better I think people are off like long term.
Yeah, definitely. Through mindfulness, through meditation particularly, we can rewire the brain in various ways. We can create new pathways on how we respond and react to things that are happening in our lives. And when you said, everything's not a fire, it's what we perceive, right? And so there's a story, and I cannot give proper credit to who shared it because it's been so long that I heard it. But the idea of like burning a piece of toast. Do we know that we burned a piece of toast, or does our brain think the house is on fire and we need to evacuate, right? Like it's creating those triggers and those pathways in the brain that we don't have to go into overdrive. We don't have to go into stress response. Everything doesn't need an instant response or
Totally.
answer. Like we have the power to say, you know what? And I think about some of the jobs I had where I was like, you clocked in, you clocked out, you had to take a very specific lunch break, you had to, there was no such thing as overtime. If you did, you were in trouble. Like that doesn't happen, especially in the land of entrepreneurs. And so if we think about how we're approaching this concept, this practice of building our businesses, do we want somebody that's burnt out and overwhelmed and not able to make good decisions? Like, because when we're stressed, we can't make good decisions. We can't do things effectively. Or do we want someone who is taking care of themselves, has those boundaries, and is able to process, address, and decide in a healthy
Totally.
way, right? And that's usually going to be a healthy way for the business or the company as well, not just for the person at hand. But I think about that, like we used to have to leave work. Our email literally sat on a desk in an office. We didn't get to bring
Yeah.
it home. Like just those things. Our phone number, somebody had to actually call us at an extension in an office that no one was answering the phone after 5
Yeah.
p.m., right? And so how can we have some of those boundaries in building our own businesses? And for me, that starts with this mindfulness. Yes, when we have other things in our lives, families and obligations, it might look different. But do we need to be working 80 hours a week? Like, can we do the same amount of work in less time if we're more productive and efficient and mindful of what we're doing?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. And like I give a lot of like grace and love to like a previous version of me. And it wasn't my last 9 to 5, but previous. And I remember crying every single day. Like I cried every day at work. And I loved the work. I was just so burnt out, and I was working 80 probably hours a week, like probably more, like constantly. And I remember like just crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like, does everybody cry at work all the time? Like, is this normal? And it's like, do I cry about my business, sure. Like every once in a while, a tear will fall upon me, but it's not like toxic. And I was creating, I think the environment helped for sure, but I was creating this level of, of strain on myself by thinking I needed to work that hard when no one else was working as much as I was. Like this was self-imposed, but I had also created a standard that that's how I worked. So I started working like that, and then I had to work like that forever. And so that's why I think, even when I do hiring now and I hire young people, not that I seek young people out, but I do have a lot of young people on my team. Like I'm very mindful of the fact that I'm like, don't work at night, and I don't like it when you do it, and I'm not going to reward it or like say anything positive about it. And because I think that's my responsibility as like a leader, as a mentor, because I like want them to go into their next role or whatever they end up doing, really feeling fulfilled. And so I said, I mentioned this on another podcast I was on, but our co-op student messaged me one time at like 9:30 p.m. and I responded back and I was like, don't message me at this time. Like, not like I'm here, but I don't need you to be. And like, you're young, go eat a shawarma. Like, go out and go to dance at a club. Like, I don't care what you do. Have fun. Like, go do things. Enjoy your youth. Savor it. But it's because I want them to have better working experiences in their young age than I had. And so, I actually had a lot of wonderful working experiences, but there were some moments too that weren't so great. So I think really thinking about creating those moments for other people is really important. And I think, but then also on the flip side, like asking for what you need. Yeah. Well, Deanna, I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I think this is something that has given me a lot of pause for thought. I guess mindfulness around adding more mindfulness to my day and like thinking about like what my days can look like. And so, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and I really appreciate it. And I'd love for you to share like where people could find you when they're looking for you, and of course, all of this will be linked in the show notes. But just wanted to give you an opportunity to share.
Well, thank you for having me. And again, this conversation, I feel like it's just something that's so needed in this idea of mindfulness and meditation, because it is something that can be really intimidating and feel awkward because it's new and different. And just know that little bits over time make a difference. So start somewhere, and if you're struggling with where to start, and some of these things that we talked about today maybe seem like, I don't know if I can do that, reach out because this is what I do. So finding me on social media, it is just Deanna Wheeler. Everything looks the same across all the platforms, so you'll definitely know it's me when you see my face there. My website is deannawheeler.life, and so you can always hook through there and find socials and things as well. And I do have a Facebook community where we talk about mindful living. That's kind of what I've termed it in my world, is this idea of living mindfully in all areas. And so if that's something that you think might serve you or help you, we'll get that linked so you can join us over there. But I really appreciate you having me in this conversation, and hopefully there's some things here that will serve listeners well and give them a little head start on mindfulness.
Definitely. I no doubt. And if you listen to this episode and you got anything from it, or you have any questions for Deanna or myself, feel free to tag us on Instagram, shoot us a DM, and let us know what your reflections are. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and enjoy your day.